It's November 9th, and for anybody who is just tuning in for the first time, this is short videos as part of a series called In the Moment of Now. And so these are like little segments of just a different perspective or maybe some advice. So we have just had an election, and so we're still in almost the same situation that we were in prior to the election in terms of where the pandemic is getting worse. We've kind of forgotten about the natural disasters, but those types of things people are not even recovered from, so that's still going on. And then the social discord and the political hostility is still there. I do feel like things have come down a level with that, but that's still going to be there for a while, and hopefully we can overcome that part of this as well. But all of these challenges are here, and this time I'm going to talk about self-accountability and keeping your stuff around you, and thinking about what is your stuff and what is other people's stuff. And I think it's a good time to move into that because families are going to be meeting up for the holidays, and or maybe not, but we still communicate through our screens, right? Our computers, our phones. And so because of the recent just political divide and the divide that is likely still there in many ways, people are going to have to communicate with each other if they're on opposite ends of the spectrum. And the whole point of the moment of now is to recreate our reality so that we can have those kind of discussions without there being anger or just being too aggressive, or even going all the way to like violence. So we have to scale it back and just learn how to be diplomatic and speak to each other if we don't agree. And we're totally capable of doing that. And so in the situation where you know that that's going to be tested, really people can get very emotional, and part of it is actually the pandemic. The whole time that we were experiencing shelter in place, and some people did through the summer, and now that's happening again, where we're kind of like, we need to hunker down a little bit, at least depending on where you live, right? If you're finding cases popping up around you of people that are sick, then you pretty much have to hunker down. And for some of us, it's fall and it's going to be winter, and so the weather is going to get cold, and we're going to feel isolated. So when we are in those situations, emotions run high, and because of all of the things that are happening, emotions run high. Even with somebody that you are with, and you might, deeply respect them, or, maybe it's a spouse or a partner that you very deeply love, you still might be hypersensitive and overly emotional because of the times that we're in. Might be quick to anger, might be quick to feel hurt, might be quick to feel judged. Because we are all frazzled to some extent. And so we have to, instead of reacting to things, we just have to keep it within us and work it out within ourselves for a minute before we bring it out into the world. And then after we learn how to keep our emotions around ourselves and not sort of let those leak out onto other people. We have to deal with our own stuff, and we have to leave the other person's stuff over there with them, in order to just have some peace of mind and just to be able to rest mentally and emotionally, and then self-nurture in the best case scenario, do something that we enjoy without negativity and negative thoughts bombarding us, or negative energy bombarding us. So the way to do that is distinctly separate our stuff and our energy from the outside forces, and just kind of put that shield around yourself. The other thing to move into, which is a little more difficult, is really putting up boundaries in a thoughtful, loving way and keeping them. So we cannot allow people to abuse us or anybody else. And the only way that that stops, or what else do we want to stop? Like, we do want to stop harming one another. We want to stop, we want to cooperate. We want to find common ground. We want to build together. We want to prosper. We all want those things. So, one of the things that we have to do is be able to trust one another. And so the honesty factor, we need people to open up and just be honest. We need people to be decent. We need people not to steal. We need people not to manipulate. We need people not to try to gain power over. We need people not to be greedy, because we have to share now to be able to put everything back together. So in order to get the positive outcome of these things becoming part of our culture, we have to sort of call out what is not that. We have to call out when somebody lies to us. We have to call out when somebody takes something from us. We have to call out when somebody is being verbally abusive to us or to another person. Now, certainly anybody in a domestic violence situation where they are going to suffer consequences, by speaking out, that is a different situation. That is something where you want to find resources in your community of counselors and social workers who can help you get out of that situation in a much less dangerous way than speaking out directly against your abuser. But for those of us in situations where, we're witnessing that, maybe it's been a long-standing pattern and maybe it doesn't even bother us so much, we still have to, we can't change the other person. We can't even really understand the other person. But what we can do is just put up a boundary that is loving, or in a loving way, or in a way that is not angry. So sometimes that's just being silent, and then the person finishes what they're saying and, okay, and then just move on to a different topic. Sometimes if the person is really aggressive or angry or shouting, you can just peacefully get up and walk away, and then at some later time just say, I don't really want to have that conversation. I am, trying to be healthy and have healthy communication, and I'm not going to participate in that. I hope you can respect that. And that's a loving way to say something to somebody. When it comes to more dangerous, like crimes, like you've witnessed a crime, or somebody is doing something super shady and it's bad for like your neighborhood or those around you, those are harder things to stand up against because you can actually put yourself in danger. But there are ways to not be around it. And so when somebody in your environment is very shady, you will have to be responsible for yourself and put up the boundary of the disconnect. You will have to, hopefully you don't live in the same household with the person, but if you do, you still have to disconnect from the lifestyle, from the belief system, not feed into it, and then of course not enable. And that's tough for parents, and it is tough for siblings and friends and and spouses. We are great enablers of one another, but if we want things to change, we really have to get our courage back, and we have to not fear rejection or fear that if we do tell somebody that we love, hey, this is not okay, that they're not going to reject us or harm us in a way that is irrecoverable. Even if at first they do, it's okay, because you don't have to be angry or sad. You can just know that you love that person, and at some point they may understand why you stopped enabling them. And we have to be brave. We can't sort of coddle and spoil one another into like, okay, I know this person lied to me, but you know, there's other things that, they do that benefit me. But see, it doesn't benefit the greater culture that we live in, and starting with our internal friends and family, our immediate environment, right there. It starts there. If we are enabling each other to carry out behaviors that are toxic and that are damaging and that do not result in a positive outcome, then we're just as much responsible for enabling the most dishonest person who is in a powerful position that can have the greatest consequences. We are enabling the biggest thief, or, the most greedy, corrupt corporate executive. We are doing that because even in our immediate environment, we're allowing our standards to be so low on what we will accept. And part of that is you don't even have to say anything, and you don't have to put up a verbal boundary or anything. You can just choose within, not to believe that the other person's behavior is justifiable, or like that it's no big deal. And you can get away from people who are shady by just getting, disconnecting from toxic people in your life, or people that are just not generating the positive vibe. And maybe you have people in your life that are addicts, and when they're using, or if they're drinking or whatever, the person that they are is not somebody that the energy of that interaction benefits you. If it's toxic for you, that's also a way of just like taking care of yourself and keeping your stuff around you, but also not letting those types of behaviors and things that have a negative effect on you even be able to affect you. And that just comes with putting up healthy, loving boundaries. And sometimes you have to be confrontational. Like if you see a person harming a child, of course most of us would step in or somehow confront that person enough to get that to stop. So there are some instances where even being confrontational is okay, to basically challenge somebody to have better behavior. And that's what we need to do also. And that's really difficult because it's not as if we all know we have bad behavior. And so if somebody calls us out, we also have to be like, oh my gosh, yeah, you know what, I wasn't seeing that about myself, and I do need to work on that. We should be calling each other out, but most of the time if somebody calls us out or we call somebody out, there's just immediate like defensiveness. And so that's what makes it hard to do it. But we have to be better people, and our standards have gotten so low on what we will accept into our lives that there's got to be a loving way to. There's great people who make mistakes, and to let those people know, hey, what you did to that person was not okay, or you kind of lied, or you kind of were dishonest in this situation, and it kind of led to this negative outcome. That's not okay. Like in the future, let's just be honest with one another. Or, there's so many realms of things. Obviously if somebody stole off of you, you might not be like maybe you would though. Maybe you'd be forgiving and having that conversation like, I know that you did that. I'm not going to pretend like I don't think you did, and it's not okay. And let's work on how we're going to never let that happen again in our relationship. So I guess you can in any situation of something that you're not going to tolerate. However, to me there are limits to that. Like if somebody hits you, or if there is extreme emotional or verbal abuse going on, that is something where forgiveness is one thing, but you have to stop it and get away from it somehow, some way, because if it is forgiven and it just continues to happen, that's a pattern, and the forgiveness isn't making any positive outcome if you're still in the situation. So it basically requires you to get out of, a situation like that. Other things are more easily forgivable, when we're like bickering or whatever, and sometimes we slip and we say something in a harsh way that we don't necessarily mean it that way. Those things are easier to just kind of be forgiving, but we still have to just uphold a value system of good morals and truth if we really want to cooperate and live in peace and recreate a reality and societies that are peaceful and beautiful. We have to have some better values at work to avoid the destruction and the violence and the discord and the greed and the power and the unfairness that has come to dominate our culture recently. So, and maybe not super recently, it goes back a long ways, but now we are at a point of change. And to do that, we really do have to be accountable to self, but we also have to be accountable for what we are enabling. And so both of those things are a lot. There is more even to it on how each individual can really make a difference in terms of how they relate to others and how they work on themselves. There's a lot of things that we can be doing with that self-accountability piece. I recommend the 4 Agreements. It's a little book, and there's 4 agreements. And so if you just read those, you Google it and you read those, even just starting there, I think we all have to start someplace now. But we really do have to look at ourselves and keep our stuff around us and work on whatever our stuff is, and let other people work on their stuff or not. Leave it alone. If it's not you, don't worry about it right now. And, and be at peace and, enable love and spread love, of course. So I think that we're on the right track, and, I continue to say that, sometimes things do get worse before they get better, and we have been through a hard year, but we're going to have to still keep our chin up and keep trying to smile, because we just are not out of the darkness yet. We have a lot of challenges ahead, and so, we just want to have this collective vibe of staying strong, staying above it, and then spreading love and just uniting in that idea of putting love out there, that people can coexist and co-create a reality that is awesome for everybody. So that's it for today. Remember, it's all about love.